Putting things like mixed or light skin in your social media handles or bio is very weird. It's not a niche and it should not be a personality.
I don't really consider myself as a black girl model. I know what my ethnicity is, but I'm fair-skinned and I feel like I have an international look.
You don't feel black?
No, that's not what I said whatsoever.
What does she mean?
When someone is invested in your identity to the extent that they are experiencing intense negative emotion, yet they couldn't care less and are completely apathetic to your experiences, that's because they are fearful of losing something based on how you identify. That's all it is. They're centering themselves in the way that you identify. The way that you identify now becomes a social issue that has consequences for them rather than something that is your actual experiences. The Black people who are outraged see her reclaiming that mixed identity as a threat to Black unity and to the Black voices in the broader racial conversation. The objective of controlling how we identify is to protect this belief that Black unity is more important than mixed identity, that Black voices are most important in discussions about diversity and inclusion, that fighting for Black causes is always more important than identifying as a mixed woman. Hello, beautiful light-skinned ladies. Welcome back to the channel. This is Dolce K. If you're new here, I make videos about light-skinned Black women's experience. I talk about the color discrimination that we face, multiculturalism, and overall feminine strategy. And in my last video, I talked about why some mixed and light-skinned people do not identify as Black. In that video, I mentioned Celia Cruz and how she transformed mulatto identity into a celebration of Blackness. There were instances of reclaiming mulatto identity in America as well that also reshaped how mixed people see themselves and each other. But I have decided to save that conversation of what mulatto actually means in America for another video. But nonetheless, this reminded me of the rapper Mulatto, now known as Latto, who began her rap career at 8 years old and was later pressured into changing her name after so many years simply because she started to gain more fame. In this video, I'll examine why there was such an intense reaction from the Black community and what they actually gained in this larger battle over mulatto identity once Latto actually changed her name. So this is the first interview clip that I want to show you guys, her interview with Jason Lee. I'm going to make my commentary throughout this one, and then we'll look at another interview. Well, I won't make any commentary until after it's completely finished. These are just some short clips, but let's go ahead and take a look because I was surprised about some of the things that she said in this Jason Lee interview.
So there's only been one issue I've had with you your entire career. When I first found Twitter, I used to burn Twitter down, and I used to be the leader of the Mulatto Mafia. That was literally what I was saying on Twitter.
For real?
Mulatto Mafia, hashtag Mulatto Mafia. Now, mind you, they just came and killed me for my 10-year-old tweets.
Oh, they did?
Probably like a couple months. Which y'all give I've been canceled by
Twitter was different then.
it. Was different.
He's informing her that he actually built a mulatto community. And so he's kind of giving her a different perspective. And let's see if she is, receptive to that, curious about it, whatever have you.
People could understand.
But when you came out as mulatto,
Yeah.
and that whole, because there was a while you were mulatto and there was no issue.
Yeah.
And then one day it was an issue.
Yeah.
And then the next day it was an issue, and then you addressed it, it was an issue. And then you talked about changing your name, and then you dropped the move, and it's just Latto. Why'd you do that?
Yeah, and it was an issue because she became famous. This girl has been a rapper since she was 8 years old. No one complained then about her name. All of a sudden, when she becomes famous, it's an issue. So he's absolutely right in his observation, and I like how he just plainly asks her, "Why did you do that?"
A combination of things. For one, I never named myself. First, it was Miss Mulatto. Like when I first started rapping on the rap game, before the rap game, whatever, it was Miss Mulatto. Then I got older and I was like, oh, Miss is like so.
Okay, so she says she never named herself. Who named her? Was it a mixed person or was it a Black person?
Childish. So then I was Mulatto. I'm growing up. I'm listening, to social media. I'm seeing the stuff that's going on in the world at the time. Like when I'm getting dragged and stuff, it's like George Floyd and I marched in Atlanta, police brutality is all these matters that's coming up, and I'm like, that's probably not socially conscious of me.
Does identifying as mulatto equate to brutalizing Black people? No, it doesn't. So how is police brutality at all relevant to an individual making a choice or being complacent and being regarded as mulatto?
So I was like, you know, I'm pretty much taking accountability for other people's
races or negativity or whatever. Yeah.
Because I didn't name myself that, I feel like I'm taking accountability for other people's actions.
So I understand what she's trying to say here. She's saying that she doesn't like the hypocrisy in that she didn't even name herself. And like I said before, it's probably a Black person who named her that. She's trying to call out the hypocrisy and the outrage that she faced, that while Black people are mad at her for calling herself mulatto, they don't even realize that is what she was taught from the Black community. So within the Black community, that label was projected onto her. She's saying that she didn't have any choice in that. I don't know if that's true or not, but she's saying that she had to take accountability for other people's actions. And I totally get that. When you're dealing with the Black community, they get to call mixed people all kinds of things, call us mulatto, mutts, whatever have you. But if we start reclaiming those terms, then it's an issue. When we accept those phrases and we're like, okay, you think I'm this or I'm that, then I'm fine with keeping that name for myself. Then all of a sudden it's an issue.
I don't really know how to say that. Other people's actions or decisions for me. Basically righting other people's wrongs without bashing anyone, of course. But I just think that stuff just didn't really like align with what I stood for. I think people started turning it into a thing that I was bragging on the fact I was mixed. People turned it into a thing where I thought that was a personality trait. Hi, nice to meet you, I'm mixed. Like, no, it's not that. So once you're being misunderstood so many times, you can't even explain
yourself on social media.
Yeah, you cannot. You're not gonna win.
And I like that she brought up that it's not a personality trait, because that's something that a lot of Black people like to throw in our faces. People accuse us of making it our entire personality, which I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. I feel like everyone has the right to make any aspect of their identity their entire personality. You have people who make their hair color their entire personality, like being blonde or being a ginger their entire personality. You have people who make being Irish their entire personality. And I'm using these examples outside of the Black community because oftentimes this is the comparison that Black people like to make. They like to refer to white people and say that, oh, we're acting like white people. Okay, that's absolutely fine. So if white people get to identify with certain aspects of their physiognomy or their phenotype or their background and make it their personality, everyone can do that. Why can't everyone do that? And Black people do it as well. Black people make having natural hair their entire personality. Some Black people do that. And I don't find offense. I don't take offense to that. But we're gonna get into why people are so angry with her making mulatto her entire personality just by having a stage name that has mulatto in it.
And even to this day, people be like, they still gonna figure out a way, even though I didn't even name myself that. They're like, well, why did you stick with it? It's always gonna be a but something. So I was just like, all I can do from
yeah, why did she stick with it? Because I do call cap that she keeps re-emphasizing that, oh, I didn't name myself that. Okay, well, you do have to be honest. You did keep the name. So I wish she would talk a little bit about that, like what actually changed for her. So far she's basically just saying that, oh, because Black people are mad at me, that's why I'm changing my name. She's not reflecting on any internal experience or internal thought process that she had. Yes, she said that, oh, it doesn't align with my values. Okay, but what are your values? Can you say what your values are? She doesn't say that in this interview.
Here on out is right my wrongs and move forward.
But I don't think you did anything wrong. That's the thing. And I
exactly.
Understand, like I always say, I said this on the Drink Champs, that ownership is real freedom. Like I own my own shit. If you like me, you don't. Watch you don't. And I know when you're an artist and you have brand partnerships and all that, that's not necessarily what drives your decisions, but you also want to be a good partner and just remove the conflict. Yeah. But I want to be clear. I don't think you did anything wrong.
And I'm so glad that he said this. I don't think that she did anything wrong either. She didn't. She called herself mulatto. And by calling herself mulatto, Black people were not being gunned down in the streets because she called herself mulatto. There was no real suffering happening because she called herself mulatto.
I get a lot of that too, even from all types of different races. Even black people, mulatto people, they both tell me like, I don't think, anything was wrong with that. To each his own. I personally, at first I didn't. I would say that I was hard headed. Then I started. I don't know. I feel like I started seeing a bigger picture and how it can be misinterpreted.
Okay, so notice how she talks about being hard headed and trying to see the bigger picture. But she just said that other races have told her they don't think that she did anything wrong. Wouldn't the bigger picture be understanding how a larger audience perceives this situation? And apparently, what she's saying is that they don't think that she did anything wrong. But I find it interesting that she used the word hard headed as if she is some child that needs to be obedient. Okay, hard headed to who? Hard headed to what directive? When you say that you're being hard headed, that means that someone was giving you a directive or was trying to tell you to do something. And if you don't listen to what they have to say, then you're being hard headed. I mean, she could have chosen a different word, but I think the word that she chose was very revealing into what actually influenced her to change her name. I don't think there was any real internal change that happened within her and her own belief systems. I think that she just caved in and said, you know what? Black people have authority over me and how I identify, and I need to be more receptive to Black people's opinions on my own personal identity.
To the world, and then I started thinking people brought different stuff to my attention. So look at this. They was like, so when you win an award, this is coming from people that was actually fans of me. They was like, I want to see you win, but when you win your Grammy, if you have a white presenter and they say to mulatto, isn't that weird? And I was like,
No, it's not weird. I wish she would elaborate on what she means because I don't understand her reaction. Okay, if a white person has to say your actual stage name and it happens to be mulatto, there's nothing wrong with that. Like I mentioned in my last video when I talked about Celia Cruz, she was a part of a group called Las Mulatas de Fuego. So that's like another example of mulatto identity not being an insult, rather being a celebration of blackness while also being mixed or, having mixed heritage. I don't see an issue with a white person acknowledging me by the label that I choose to identify with. If I say that I identify as mulatto, I'm not going to get mad because a white person now says, hey, this award goes to mulatto. No one was bringing up these situations or these hypothetical situations when it came to NWA, niggas with an attitude. No one was like, oh, niggas with an attitude, you should probably change your name because if you win a music award, which they did win music awards, then a white person is going to have to say the N word. I don't think anybody cared that there was a group of black people calling themselves niggas in the public eye in the music industry, the same industry that mulatto is in.
I just started thinking, you know what I'm saying, and thinking ahead and thinking like, do I really want to have this image of me globally?
And do you want to constantly have to defend it or something?
Yeah, and explain something that clearly is not being transferred. Like,
Exactly. So now we're getting to a little bit of truth here. She doesn't want to have to go through having to explain herself all the time and having to argue with black people all the time because they're outraged. She doesn't know how to just ignore it. So she already knows that she cares so much about what black people think about her own identity that it wasn't worth her standing 10 toes down on it because she's that invested in what black people think about her identity. So I appreciate her transparency there. Instead of it being about this whole thing, oh, my values changed, or, well, maybe your values did change, but that value, that change was the value in yourself. Now you don't have this value in your identity. Now you have more value in what black people think about your identity. And I appreciate her transparency about that. It is exhausting to have to explain why we have light skin in our username, why we have mixed or mulatto in our stage names or in our, in our hashtags or in our bios, because The person who's demanding an explanation doesn't care. They are not asking because they really care about our experiences. So yeah, it's exhausting. I appreciate her transparency.
The message is not being transferred how I want it to be, at least. So it's not worth going to war about it. I don't feel that strongly about it. It's not like I wake up and brush my teeth and be like, I'm mixed. Like,
oh my God, she did the Black Power fist. It's so funny because she's like, it's not like I wake up and brush my teeth. But it's like there are Black people who wake up and brush their teeth, look in the mirror, raise their fist, and they say, I'm Black and I'm proud. Like I used to be one of those people. I mean, I kind of still am. But there are people who do that. There's nothing wrong with having pride in being mixed. There's nothing wrong with having pride in being mulatto. There's nothing wrong with having pride in being Black. There's nothing wrong with having pride in being white. And I know a lot of people will feel triggered when I say that. There is nothing wrong with having pride in being white. We are all familiar with the whole thing of like white pride and stuff like that. And some people do go out of their way to impose this superiority over other groups of people, but that's not pride, that's hate, right? So what I'm talking about is being proud of who you are. There's nothing wrong with that, regardless of what your race is.
Never Black enough.
Yeah.
And to white people, you
no, that part you can't tell me I'm wrong about saying because that's facts. That everybody has their own experiences in life, and that is something that I experienced, and nobody can take that away from me. I definitely felt like on this side I wasn't Black enough. On this side I'm not white enough. I don't fit in on this side. I don't fit on where do I fit in? As a kid, I think I was just confused majority of the time as a kid. Like I was like, where do I fit in? I don't think I dealt with it until I just understood that I don't have to fit in. I'm just me. It's not, a race thing. It's just a me thing. Like I can be me, and whoever accept me, accept me.
I did find it interesting that she kept re-emphasizing that she didn't choose that name and having to take accountability for the actions of other people. We didn't really get to hear much about her own inner thought and her own inner reflection. So I did a little bit more digging, and I found this interview that she did with Hot 97. We're going to listen to a couple of minutes of it. Then I'm going to show you some of the comments, and we'll come back for commentary.
Yeah. So you had a name change from how we met you, Mulatto, to Big Latto.
You met me at Mulatto. Originally it was Miss Mulatto.
Miss Mulatto. So why the name change?
Okay, so I feel like I was already getting, backlash for it, but people got to understand this name. I haven't even really went in depth about it, but this name was given to me at 8 years old. I'm not comfortable too much. I haven't told that story in depth just because I don't want to get people bashed. You know what I'm saying? It's a delicate subject because it's like family involved and shit. But nobody had ill intent. I was stuck with the name because that was my name from the beginning. I wasn't really aware of the historical definition, the depth that it carried. So as I'm getting older, I'm like, dang, this really not. I'm listening to the people now. Like, I'm open ears. I'm like, I can have my own opinion now. I'm an adult, grown woman now, and I'm not being. It's hard to say because I wasn't like a robot. People wasn't telling me like necessarily what to do, but
that was just your name. That's what your family called you, and that's what it was, right?
No, my family didn't call me that.
Oh, okay.
They call me Alyssa, but I was given it as a stage name, whatever. Anyways, I'm growing up. I'm like, this is not things that's aligning with my beliefs, my morals, my values. So I'm like, you know what? I can't go back to the drawing board. Now, what people don't know is when I changed it, that was like a year process. Was like, I'm ready to dead this. You know what I'm saying? I was already like, man, what's the hold up? But it's legal stuff, lawyers, PR, label.
But I don't think most people know how long you've been a business entity also, right? Like, I don't think people know the whole...
You're only 23, right?
Yeah, I'm 23.
But you've been rhyming publicly.
Yeah.
Since, 15, 14?
My biggest platform was the rap game at 16.
Right, 16, there you go.
So, like, my biggest introduction to the world, But I got music videos from, 8 years old.
So you were already... So changing the name required... You had songs streaming already. You had all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, it's deeper than me just being like, oh, let me just go change all my YouTube titles. Like, it's deeper than that. So, it was a process.
And I think that answer was an amazing answer, by the way.
I mean, I really just
it's
gotta
honest,
tell it like
but it's amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna tell you why. Because a lot of people, listen, we live in a society, colorism and all these things, and being light skinned, right, or being of mixed race, comes with baggage. It also comes with privilege in some ways. And so when you roll out and you're like, yo, basically I'm mulatto, I'm light skinned. People are like, nah, bro.
Yeah, I was being misunderstood because they was taking it like that. Like I thought it was a personality trait. Like I'm mulatto, so you know what I'm saying? But then when I'm being like caught up to date on these things, I'm like, wait, no, that's not what I meant by that. That's not. I didn't even name myself that from the jump.
But that's the most commendable part of your story.
Yeah.
Is that instead of being defensive, I'm sure you were at first.
Oh yeah. Oh no, I was for sure because I didn't even understand what it meant. I'm like, why is y'all tripping out?
So, but I give you credit because as time went on, instead of just fighting, you went, well, hey, people are expressing a feeling. Let's look into it.
You got to listen. You got to keep your ear to
that
the
wins
streets.
people over.
Right.
That wins people over.
You just got to be honest. Like it wasn't something that I did media training for or like talk to my publicist, like, this is how you need to answer this question. It's like, I just want to tell them what it really was.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Now, they don't know the whole everything because they don't know, like, who gave me the name and, like, how it came about, just because what I said earlier is like.
When then the baggage of American society is bundled in there too, right? Where things are placed upon you, like you said, the name, look, there are absolutely people in entertainment that know that because someone is lighter complected, the odds of their success is better than if they're a different complexion.
Yeah.
And so the people who are of a darker complexion are looking at you going, what?
Like you kind of bragging on the fact that you have that privilege, right? So I just felt misunderstood because all these things is true. That's how it come off. Facts. Whether or not that's how I meant it, that's how it come off. And I don't never want to.
Yo, that's so fire. Yeah,
you know
what you're doing right now is I think for a lot of people.
Yeah.
They need to hear that.
It is. It is for a lot of people. And it's important that the right message gets transferred to the people.
Okay, now that we have watched that Hot 97 interview clip with Latto, and she has explained that she took an entire year of her time and invested that into making all of the necessary changes to make the name change official, I think this is a good time to raise the question of what did monoracial Black people gain from Mulatto changing her name to Latto? Also, what did Mulatto gain? But that'll be another question. What did monoracial Black people gain from Mulatto changing her name to Latto? Why does the Black community care so much what mixed people call themselves and how they refer to themselves? I'm asking this question because oftentimes when light-skinned Black people and mixed people talk about the racism and the discrimination that we face in the Black community at the hands of other Black people, those experiences have historically been dismissed by that same community. The performative and selective outrage that we see Black people hurling at mulatto is often paired with these excuses like, oh, well, the word mulatto derives from mule and it's racist to use that against mixed people. And mulatto was created to oppress Black people. And while these pretextual excuses might be factually true, they ignore the fact that Black people also took part and still do take part in characterizing mixed and light-skinned people in degrading and derogatory ways through the use of racial slurs. So could you imagine a white person telling niggas with an attitude not to call themselves nigga? Obviously, the automatic response would be, okay, tell your people to stop calling us N-words with the hard R. That's exactly the dynamic that I feel and that I see when Black people find outrage in how mixed and light-skinned people and mulatto people identify, while simultaneously taking pleasure in calling us mutts, hybrids, preferences, half-breeds, exoticals, and tethers. Yeah, that's a lot of racial slurs being used against us by the Black community in 2024, 2025. These excuses are pretextual, and they also conveniently ignore the fact that just as Black people reappropriated the word nigga, mixed people reappropriated the word mulatto. And while not every Black or mixed person identifies with these words respectively or even uses them, they have every right to do so if they choose. I know some people will argue that the term nigga doesn't carry the same privilege as mulatto, and I agree. This is why the interviewer acknowledges that mulatto benefits from light skinned and mixed privilege, and how this can make some Black people highly uncomfortable when we highlight these aspects of our identity. And that discomfort comes from a lack of recognition of our individuality. We have unique and challenging experiences tied to our skin tone and tied to our mixed heritage. But instead, there's this tendency to assume that people like mulatto are just wanting to boast and flaunt the privileges that we have over darker complexion monoracial people. But even if her name was something trivial or entirely different, the reality remains she would still benefit from mixed race and light skin privilege. So choosing to identify with terms like mixed, light skin, or mulatto doesn't increase our privilege. It's not like we become more mixed or more light skinned. What it does do is make our experiences more visible. And so these labels, they serve to make the unique challenges and stories about being light skinned and mixed race more identifiable. So while some people in the Black community will be triggered or just very uncomfortable because we're using these labels, it's important to understand that acknowledging our identity is not about boasting. It's about owning our truth and creating a space for our voices and where people can recognize that we have an experience that is unique to our heritage, unique to our skin tone. What is most discrediting to the Black people who were outraged by Mulatto's name is the fact that they didn't engage with Mulatto's experience of being mixed when she talks about how Black people in her community made her feel like an outcast, made her feel like an outsider. And that is a fundamental experience of mulatto identity and the light-skinned experience in America. So this reveals that Black people were not invested in her mixed experience, but they were very invested in her mixed identity. So when someone is invested in your identity to the extent that they are experiencing intense negative emotions, yet they couldn't care less and are completely apathetic to your experiences that are rooted in your identity, that's because they are fearful of losing something based on how you identify. That's all it is. They're centering themselves in the way that you identify. The way that you identify now becomes a social issue that has consequences for them rather than something that is your actual experiences within American society. And this opens the gateway for oppression because when you separate someone's identity from their experiences, you are trying to marginalize them into one community or another so that you can oppress them and fit them into the racial hierarchy in a way that you see fit. So that's what Black people are doing to mixed people whenever they gatekeep the word mulatto. This behavior of prioritizing one's own fears and interests over another's lived experiences is central to the systematic oppression that we see in the United States. We see this in how white Americans enforce the one drop rule. White Americans were scared of losing control over the racial system that gave them power. They enforced the one drop rule to make sure that mixed race people were labeled as Black, and they kept the racial hierarchy intact and protected the idea that white people were superior. Because of that, there is a semblance of unity between mixed people and Black people because we all experience being lumped together into Blackness by the one drop rule. And now the Black people who are outraged by mulatto's name see her reclaiming that mixed identity, that mulatto identity, as a threat to this Black unity and to Black voices in the broader racial conversation. The objective of controlling how we identify is to protect this belief that Black unity is more important than mixed identity. This belief that Black voices are most important in discussions about diversity and inclusion. This belief that fighting for Black causes is always going to be more important and more worthy than identifying as a light-skinned Black woman or as a mixed woman. Basically, they're worried that they'll lose sociopolitical influence in the overall race talk. But wouldn't the best way to protect that Black unity and those Black voices be to focus on people who already do identify as Black and then build upon that in-group strength and that in-group unity without putting so much focus on light-skinned and mixed people, regardless of how we identify, but especially not those of us who choose to identify our mixedness or our light. Instead of of taking that solution-oriented approach, we see a lot of Black people bullying us when we don't identify solely as Black and nothing more. For example, like when we have light-skinned or mixed in our social media bios. Oh, you're just Black. You're not allowed to identify as anything other than Black. And this is what they are doing with Mulatto, who is biracial. And sometimes we see them go even further by trying to force mixed and light-skinned people who already identify as Black out of their Black identity. All of this creates more division. Bullying someone into a racial purity is always going to be more divisive and harmful than some mixed girl on YouTube calling herself a pretty exotical, or a Black woman with light-skinned in her username, or a rapper owning the mulatto identity label. And when we are successfully bullied into silence, when we downplay and hide our mixed identity, we let them absorb our experiences into their own, even though they may be different and oftentimes are different. On the flip side, when a Black identified person complains about us having mixed or light skin in our social media bios or in our usernames, it's really because they don't feel secure in their own ability to have social influence, political influence, without bullying mixed and light-skinned people into silence, racial purity, and allyship. They don't want mixed light-skin identity or mixed experiences to ever be the focal point in any public platform in any space, but especially not in the entertainment industry. What's even crazier is that Mulatto still got labeled as a colorist by the Black community. The name change didn't win her any fans because in the past, she had this roasting session with her friend, and in that roasting session, she called her dark-skinned friend a pet orangutan. So honestly, I don't think that Mulatto's name change did much to improve her standing with the Black community, because they still see her at the end of the day as just another colorist light-skinned woman. So to answer the question of what did Black people gain from Mulatto changing her name to Latto, they gained validation and representation. Now they get to absorb whatever experiences she has as a Black experience. And if it happens to not align, they're going to treat her experience as an anomaly rather than an experience that is a culmination of her identity being mixed. Second question is, what did Mulatto gain from changing her name? How exactly did her Black fans welcome her back into the community after she changed her name? Mulatto could have easily succeeded without the Black American fan base. Literally every background listens to female hip hop artists. And I know she didn't need the Black fan base because just look at how successful Ice Spice has been in comparison to Latto. Even though Ice Spice gets nothing but hate comments from thousands of Black people on her social media every day, she still outperformed Mulatto in her Y2K World Tour, and she sold nearly 80% of the tickets for that tour. Meanwhile, Latto, she also had a tour. It was the 777 tour, and it only grossed $120,000. It was the lowest grossing female rap tour of the year. And I think it's because of her caving in and changing her name. It's because a lot of people lost respect for her when she changed her name from Mulatto to Latto. Like I mentioned before, she's still seen as a colorist by the Black community. So this could have been another blatant yet very subtle wave of retaliation from her Black fan base as well. They probably intentionally chose not to support Latto and buy the tickets to her tour, even though she is an amazing rapper. I absolutely love her music. She's an amazing lyricist. But what did she get in return for changing her name? Not a damn thing, but a false sense of emotional safety from an issue that she is going to have to face someday in her life. Mulatto and I, we're around the same age range, so I know for a fact she's going to have to face this issue at some point in her life, whether that be in the public eye or in private. She's just prolonging the inevitable. Meanwhile, Ice Spice pays the Black community literal dust. Like, she does not care. She literally tunes that stuff out and lives her best life, doesn't care at all. And so that's why I'm saying, like, we don't get anything in return from caving in and letting other people decide for us how we should identify, how we should represent ourselves. But before I end this video, I want to show you one last clip that I found. I don't know how I came across this. I was so happy when I found it. This was an interview that Mulatto did when she was much, much younger. I'm not sure how old she is in this interview, but she's much, much younger, and man, she is singing a different tune in this video. So let's check it out.
Miss Mulatto actually started as a derogatory term historically. But I kind of like took the negativity and made something positive out of it. I get a lot of slack for it though. People don't like that at all. But there's a story behind it. I used to be very insecure about my race growing up, just being the light-skinned, long, blonde-haired girl in a majority black school. You know, you get a lot of hate for that. So basically, I just took the negativity and turned it into positivity.
What is it? What does that derogatory word mean, I guess? Or where does it stem from?
It stems from a black person and a white person having a kid, which is mixed, biracial. Basically, it was just a bad term. People don't like that at all.
And that's been your rap name from the beginning?
Yeah, from the beginning, since I was like 10 years old, I've been.
And would you look at that? You know what they say, children do not lie, okay? She clearly understood the assignment. She understands the power of reclamation. She understands how when someone wants to oppress you and dehumanize you with a slur, that you actually have the power to reclaim it from them and transmute it into something that is empowering. It's interesting how a young child could understand this power, but now this power has been bullied out of her. I hope she taps back into that power that she had at this young age.
Biracial is fine. Mulatto is not fine, but I don't think anyone says that.
I love the word mulatto because I love old, antiquated language that is used to describe race. I love the way that a lot of artists and thinkers and writers are taking back those words and re-signifying.